Hello and welcome to Relatable Code. In this video, I want to show you how to handle null values in Kotlin. This is a very essential part of any programming language, so let's get started. So in the previous video, we made a very basic setup for our calculator application, but in that setup, the user couldn't enter the numbers to perform an arithmetic operation on. So in this video, we're going to show you how to handle user input for these numbers. Okay, so if I'm going to start with the first number, I'm going to write a prompt for the user, similar to the prompt we wrote for the operator. Okay, this would be something like print line, please enter the first number. Okay, let's forget about the second number for now, and just try to parse the first number from the user's input. So how can we do that? We parsed a string using the readLine function, and that was okay. But in this case, we need an integer. So we're going to write readLine, and we're going to convert that to an integer with the toInt function, like that. Okay, so this function basically takes a string and returns an integer. But here you can see we have an error. Why does this error occur? We hover over the red line, and here we can see only safe or non-nullable or non-null asserted calls are allowed on a nullable receiver of type string. What do we mean by that, and what is null in itself? So remember when we were talking about variables and we said a variable is like a container that can contain a value? That's good. But in our case, null is like when you're searching for that container, but you can't find it at all. And that's different from having an empty value. So we previously saw that strings can have an empty value, like this, val empty string equals, and this is an empty string. Okay, so if this was a container, it would basically contain nothing. But if this was null, like that, I can't consider this a container anymore. So when I'm trying to search for the value of empty string, I can't find any value, in this case when it's null. Okay, that's basically the difference between a null value and an empty value. So in our case, we have first number equals readLine.toInt. And we have an error here because readLine can return a null value. Okay, and you can't convert a null value to an integer, so this will cause you problems. So here we have to write, if we hover over the red line, they say only safe or non-asserted calls are allowed. Okay, and what this means is you have to write the question mark operator here. This question mark operator means first number, in this case, is a nullable integer. And why is it a nullable integer? Because it has a question mark to the right. And a nullable integer basically is an integer that can have a null value. Okay, so this can either be an integer or null in our case. I'm going to show you how a null value may happen in this case. Okay, let's comment out this entire code. And here, after we read the first number from the input of the user, let's try to print it out. So print line first number. Okay, let's run our program. Here we are prompted to enter the first number. Let's say the user doesn't want to enter it, and he just does something like Control D, which exits the terminal. Here you can see, after doing that operation, we get null. What value is this referring to, or what variable is this referring to? It's referring to first number. Okay, because first number attempted to read the input from the user through this terminal, but a null case happened because the user exited the terminal. Okay, so you're going to face a lot of these cases in your code in the future, which is why you need to handle them efficiently. And how you can handle them in this case, for example, if first number equals null, just say first number equals 0. Okay, let's remove this. Let's uncomment this code. Now let's see what other problems may occur with this code. Let's try to run our program. Okay, please enter the first number. Let's say I just pressed on enter. In this case, I get an exception. An exception is like an error. Number format exception for input string, empty string. Why did this happen? Because in this line of code, you're saying first number equals readLine dot to integer. Well, in this case, readLine read an empty string. This empty string can't get converted to an integer. So how are we going to do a workaround for this? We're going to write to int or null. And now, if I try to run my code, please enter the first number. I press on enter. And as you can see, I don't get an exception anymore. Okay, because now first number can accept a null value. Okay, this won't crash your program anymore. And because it was a null value here, first number is now equal to 0. Okay, second number is still equal to 4. And now we're going to enter an operator. We say plus. The result is 0 plus 4 equals 4. Why 0? Because as we discussed, first number was null in this case. Okay, because the user entered, just pressed on enter, and thus an empty string was produced, and an empty string can't get converted to an integer. So instead of having an integer, we had a null value. We handled that null value here, and we could proceed with our program as expected. Okay, let's do the same for second number as well. So here, copy that, print line, enter the second number. So now we're going to save our second number is equal to readLine dot to int or null. And now we're going to do the same check for second number. If it's equal to null, I want it to be equal to 0. So now let's try to run our program again. Please enter the first number, press on enter. Please enter the second number, press on enter again. Please enter an operator, plus, enter. The result is 0 plus 0 equals 0. Okay, that was how you can handle null values in Kotlin, but that's not the recommended way. I'm going to show you the recommended way now. Okay, so if we review our code, we prompted the user for 2 inputs for one number and another number, and we tried to get that input from the user and assign it to an integer. Okay, and when that integer was null, we did some manual handling and we gave it a default value of 0. Okay, this is called a default value because it's the value that will be used in the default case when you don't have any other value to assign to it. Okay, so how can we do this using the power of Kotlin? You can use this operator. It's a question mark followed by a column. It's called an Elvis operator. And after that, you write 0. Okay. Now there's no need for this code anymore because this means this. Okay. What's an Elvis operator? Basically, it's called an Elvis operator because I think it resembles the hair of Elvis, or so they say. And what this means is first number is equal to this value. And if this value is null, it's equal to this value. Okay, whatever is to the right of the Elvis operator. Okay, and it's not exclusive to Kotlin. You can find the Elvis operator in many other programming languages. Sometimes it's referred to as a ternary operator. Okay, so now we don't need this code anymore. We can try to run our application again. Please enter the first number. I don't want to. Please enter the second number. Let's enter 5. Operator plus, for example. Now we have the result is 0 plus 5 equals 5. Okay, because what was left to this Elvis operator was null, so this value was taken. Okay, that was the Elvis operator in Kotlin, and you can do even more than this. So what if I don't want to just return a default value of 0? I want to tell the user that he entered an invalid number, for example, and 0 was going to be used instead of that. How can I do that? So to the right of this operator, instead of just returning an integer, we can run a block of code. How can we do that? We write run. Okay. This is a very nice way of handling null values and errors in Kotlin, and I really like to use this way. So you're going to see it a lot in future videos. So what we do in this case, we're going to need an integer for first number. Right now, it doesn't have an integer. So if I write 0 inside the run block, now it has an integer value. Okay, but this wasn't our intention. I'm going to show you why this happens as well. We wanted to write a message to the user saying that he entered an invalid number and 0 was going to be used instead. So we write print line invalid first number. 0 is going to be used instead. Okay. And why does this work? We only need an integer for first number. And to the left of this Elvis operator, we had a value that could be an integer or null. Okay. And to the right of this Elvis operator, we had a block of code. But if you check the last line in the run block of code, you can see an integer. So this is the integer that will be used in case this was null. Okay, so what's going to be to the right of the Elvis operator is going to get triggered. It's a run block. And when using a run block and you want to return a type, in this case an integer, it's going to be the last line of this run block. Let's try to run this code so that you can see how it works. So run main Kotlin file, please enter the first number, enter. As you can see here, now you have a print statement when it's null, which is saying invalid first number, 0 is going to be used instead. Okay, please enter the second number, going to write 6, going to write minus, and now the result is 0 minus 6 equals minus 6. Okay, that's how you use the run function in Kotlin to deal with null values and in general some basic errors. Okay. Now let's do the same for the second number, but instead of making this run block, let's just use a default value like what we did a little while ago. So let's delete this. We no longer need it. And now, of course, we have an error because this could be null. And we don't want it to be null because we want to perform this arithmetic operator on it. So we're going to write the Elvis or ternary operator, and we're going to give it a default case to use in case this value was null. Okay, I'm going to have it be 1 instead of 0. So I'm going to show you when we run our program. Please enter the first number, click on enter. You get that error message. But if we do the same for the second number, we are prompted to enter an operator. We don't get a message like the first case, because in the first case, before returning the default value, we printed this statement. Okay, that's why I really like to use this run block, especially when dealing with null values in Kotlin. So if I want to enter an operator, I enter the plus operator, and here the result is 0 plus 1 equals 1. 0 from this default case and 1 from this case, because this was null. Okay, I hope that was clear. And that's basically how you deal with null values in Kotlin. One important note before we proceed, be careful when using this run block, because if you write 0 first, for example, before the print line statement, and you hover over first number, it's no longer an integer. Okay, because instead of returning this or the 0 value, it's now returning this, or if it's null, this. Okay, you should be careful when using this, because if we now, we can't even run our code, because of course the arithmetic operator won't work, because this is no longer an integer. Okay, so let's get that back to how it was. So in the run block, when you wanted to return a value, like in our case, we're trying to assign a value to first number and it is an integer. The last line of the run block has to be an integer. Okay, so that this value can be used in the null case. Now I want to talk to you about the readline function. I don't think I've explained it so far, and I like you to know basically everything about what you're doing in your code. Okay, so the readline function is a function that reads an input from an input stream. So what's a stream in programming? You can think of a stream as a stream of data or a flow of data if you want. Okay, like for example, a river of water flowing next to you, and you have a bucket that you want to use to collect some water from this river. Okay, so the water is our input stream, and the bucket is how we're going to collect water from that input stream. Basically our readline function. Okay, and it's not limited to just taking user input from the terminal. The readline function can also process this input stream from a file, for example. Okay, it can be a file like this text file. You can use it to read this text file line by line. Okay, and when does it return null in this case? When it's trying to read a new line and there's no new line to read. For example, in this text file, we just have one line, which is this. So if it's trying to read the line that's after this, it won't be able to do so. Okay, because it would have reached the end of the file. So you will get an end of file exception. Okay, I hope that was clear. And I hope this wasn't too difficult to comprehend. If you feel like this run gave you some problems, you don't have to use it. I just like to use it in this case because I just want to print out some extra information or do some custom handling if you want, in case I got any null value. Okay, so play around with that and try to get comfortable with using it, because we're going to be using it a lot in future videos. But first, understand how this basic line of code works with this ternary operator. Okay, so if you like this video, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you in the next video.